Comenzamos nuestro segundo bloque desde Santa María, California, en la Bodega Presquile.
Yeah, architecturally, what makes this place unique is it's a gravity-fed winery. So if you look at where we are right now, we have a tasting room here, and then above us on a hill, that's actually where we make the wine. And right behind us in the tasting room is actually where we store all of our barrels to age the wine. So it's very unique that we don't use pumps here. Everything is flowed by gravity because we bring all the grapes in up above here, produce the wine, and then let nature take over and gravity take over to bring all the wine gently here. So if you look at what we do in the vineyards, which is very organic, we try to be more hands-off with what we do in the vineyard. We like to do that within our winemaking style, and part of that is no use of pumps and whatnot. So we like to be really gentle with the winery. So we started to look at how this place was designed. Really, that's what was in mind. We really had this idea. We wanted to make a really nice gravity flow winery so we could be gentle with the wine.
So the Murphy family owns this property. They're originally from Arkansas. Their company that they started originally had head offices in London where they lived for maybe 10 years. And so the family, while living in London, was exposed to a lot of French wines, obviously, Burgundy being their favorite. So Pinot Noir, kind of, you know how the list goes, and Chardonnay from there as well. So their passion developed in Europe for wine. They came back to the States, still living in Arkansas, and their oldest son was very passionate about wine. So were they, purely because of it was part of their culture. It was something they did, something they appreciated, and something that obviously kind of stimulated a little bit of passion in the oldest son. And so they started looking all up and down the west coast of the United States for properties, for areas where they might find, you know, some interest, something that's a little different than your standard wine growing areas. Their oldest son ended up working for a winery in the Santa Maria Valley, where they inevitably invested in that winery. I was on an exchange program through my university from South Africa, and I also ended up, purely by a coincidence, working at that winery. And so we did 3 vintages there. And then the family wanted to remove themselves from that investment and started their own winery. And due to their knowledge of this area, being part of the social structure here, knowing the people, they felt that this was the best area. Slightly underrated in our minds, so we could be part of the growth. And so they bought this property with the goal of creating their own personal project. The name Presquile means peninsula, or almost an island, essentially, if you translate it directly. And the family had a piece of property on the Mississippi Gulf Coast by Pascars Chan and Biloxi, right next to Louisiana, and they lost the property in Hurricane Katrina. It was named Presquile by their great-grandfather. It's been in their family for 5 generations, and he was a Francophile. He was completely enamored by France, and so the shape of the property gave him the idea to name it Presquile. And so when we did this year, we named it in honor of that, in creating an environment where the family can come hang out, where we have a comfortable rapport, where we have a southern hospitality, something that they bring from their part of the world, their culture, you know, from that part of America, and bring it to the West Coast.
So the experience we like to have here for our guests is it's quite varied, depending on what you want to do. If you just want to come up for a glass of wine and a bottle of wine and enjoy it here on our beautiful terrace, by all means, please come in. But if you want to do something a little bit more from an educational perspective, we do have tours. We do have tours that are not only just focused on food, but just on wine, but it's also food and wine pairing. And then also in the summertime, we do concerts. We have a nice little amphitheater out here, and on Friday or Saturday nights, we open up the doors and do a concert, and we'll bring in 700 people from the local community to come and listen to some music and drink some wine.
34 hectares planted right now, which would be around 72 acres, if my math is wrong, right? Roughly 72 acres. How much that ends up being in hectares, my math could be wrong. Mostly Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, a little bit of Nebbiolo, a little bit of Syrah, a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc, and then we just recently added some Gamay Noir and Aligoté to our vineyard here. Organically farmed, on our way of course, to getting certified. We're not currently certified, but we're on our way there to get the full certification. And other than that, I mean, we just essentially try to create wines, of course, that are owned to the site. We have a very unique area here. This transverse valley, there's a mountain on our left and a mountain on our right, and the valley lies perpendicular to the ocean. There's only two of them on the west coast of the United States. The other one is Santa Rita Hills to the south of us. And because of that shape, it is such a unique climate that you can't replicate anywhere up or down the coast. You can't do it. It's just a geographical feature that we were blessed with in this valley. And in that sense, we have a very unique terroir that we're trying to exploit, that we're trying to use to our benefit and to capture in a bottle. It's challenging because it is so cold and because we are so close to the ocean. It's not easy. This is beach sand. This is a sand. We're growing on sand dunes, at least on the topsoil, broken down seashells. You can still find seashells here. So it does create challenges, but it also creates an environment where you can really produce unique wines if you can wrap your head around it, which we all know is difficult in winemaking, but that's why we keep doing it. As I mentioned, our soils are rather weak because of their nature, their origin, right? Their mother material being basically seashells creates a weak environment in regards to biomass and organic material, which is frankly our main mission with our organic farming now, is to enrich our soils. But up until this point, we've dealt with rather weak soils. So the flavor profile that we get from the soils, I think, is minimal compared to what we do get from the climate out here. I think our soil is less influential on our flavor profile than the climate. That being said, because it's cold, of course the wines will never be massively extracted. We don't have a lot of tannin. That will never happen here. Even in the warm vintages, our wines are rather medium-bodied and elegant. Our white wines, including our red wines, high in acidity. That's something we pursue with passion. We do not like to add anything to our wine, with the exception of a little bit of sulfur prior to bottling. We try to not add anything. And this area is conducive to that you can, if you pick the right times, you can make wine without having to throw anything else that wasn't in the vineyard in there, that doesn't come from the terroir, essentially. So if you want to carry the philosophy from farming all the way to drinking, we're in a very lucky area that we're able to pull that off most years. Most vintages we can do that. So I think the main descriptor that typically comes, I think, with fruit profile on red wines with cooler areas, it's more red fruit. Now, how me and you smell red fruit is different, but cherries, things of that, tart cherries, strawberries, those are pretty more dominant ones. Whereas in warmer areas, obviously your fruit would be darker in color if you want to kind of think of just the spectrum of fruit, because I don't think one single fruit is identifiable as a specific flavor profile in wine. And on the Chardonnays, of course, we do find that the high levels of minerality that we have in the soil does tend to show up a little bit in Chardonnay, most of all things. So it does tend to be the salinity, or almost a sense of saltiness on the finish, is something we've noticed on our Chardonnays, if picked correctly. If it's picked too late, then those things tend to disappear. And it's not right or wrong, but stylistically we're trying to achieve lower alcohol wines, more elegant wines with higher acidity. Not always, but when the vintage lets us do that, that's our ideal. If it doesn't, we'll adjust and we'll adapt.
Hacemos la segunda pausa. No te vayas, que ya venimos con más Presquile desde California.